Feller counts backwards, Bob.
I know that. He does that good, too.
Yeah, I know. He starts all the way up there at 3. Takes a smart feller to count backwards 3 times. I
He
remember when,
come out with the same number.
yeah, nothing. I remember when I was little, first got a television, they'd start 5, 4. There was a show come on every Saturday morning, kind
Right.
of silly looking at it now, but 5, 4,
Three,
3,
two,
2,
one,
1,
and
blast
away
off, and
we
then
go.
no, that was who was them crows?
Heckle
Tally,
and Jekyll.
yeah, tally ho, and away we go. See you next week with a brand new show.
Yeah, Heckle and Jekyll.
Yeah, it was good crows.
It wasn't bad.
You know, a lot of things. Yeah, what?
what?
You started to say something.
Well, I was going to tell you about crows. Crows can't count. Did you know that? They can't count over 3.
I know.
If you put 4 or 5 people out there in a blind and have 3 of them to leave, the crows, they just come right on back in. They don't realize there's a couple more guys with shotguns there.
Funny thing, I saw this thing about crows that if you do something that frightens one, he'll recognize you when you come back.
He will, yeah.
He will, and his young'uns will recognize you if they've never seen you.
Well, possibly.
That's what they found out. There's a video on YouTube. Used to could find it where this old crow had him a piece of cardboard and he's up on this roof, and he'd go down there and get it and carry it up there to the peak of the roof, and he'd sit down. There was snow on the roof, and he'd get on that thing. He'd slide down, and then he'd get it and fly back up there and get on it and do it again. He was a sledding off that roof there.
Well, when I was a young man, we had pet crows at the house all of the time. The one I remember most, we called him Bill, and we had him during the Second World War. And I know my mom had an old aluminum kettle that she would carry out to the well to fill it up, wind that old bucket up out of the well and fill that kettle up with water.
Yeah.
Well, Bill, Mama would set the kettle down and maybe go gather eggs or something else or whatever she's doing. Well, Bill would come and pick that light aluminum kettle up and fly off with it. And he'd drop it out there in the middle of the garden somewhere usually, and Mama would have to go over the fence, because there's a fence around the garden there, go over the fence, go out there and retrieve her kettle. Well, so what she started doing was when she went to the well, the first thing she did is fill her kettle up. Okay, then she'd go do her work, and Bill would come and he would raise all kind of cane because he couldn't pick that kettle up and fly off with it. But he was quite a character. We'd go to Greensboro, which was I believe it was 4 miles to the city limits. It was 8 miles up there to Washington Street in Greensboro, which is one of the main thoroughfares that came back through A&T College and came on back down Highway 70 back to McLeansville, North Carolina. That's where we live. Well, if we didn't catch Bill and lock him up in the corn crib, when we parked on Washington Street in Greensboro, North Carolina, Bill was sitting on the hood before we got out of the car.
That's bad as that dog that you met going home you didn't give up on. Is it raining?
Huh?
Yeah, it's raining. Okay.
Okay. Well, Bill, if he come uptown, we were afraid somebody would shoot him or kill him or something. We'd try to catch him, and we usually did, and we'd put him in the trunk of that 37 Chevrolet sedan. Well, that really made Bill mad, because when he got out there, he was some kind of angry. He didn't like to be put in the trunk of that car. But he was very, very smart. We had a little bell. We had a ribbon tied around his neck where the bell would kind of...
That's to scare the cats off, I guess.
Yeah, well, and also to let people know he was a pet.
I'll tell you what, I was here one day, this had been 25 years ago. There was a crow come through and he lit in a tree right down here, and he locked on to it with one paw, claw, whatever you call them, and he turned over and was hanging there upside down by 1 foot. And I watched him, and he moved a little while, twitched some, and then he was still. And he stopped there to die. I don't know what was wrong with him, whether his old age or somebody poisoned him. I don't know what was wrong with him, but he come there and locked that foot on that limb so that I guess so he wouldn't be nothing bothering him while he was there. And he died. And he hung there for months. And finally he dried up and everything fell off but that
Claw.
hanging there. And it hung there for a year or more.
Right.
I don't know. They're strange critters.
Well, we used to go and hunt crows every spring, look for a nest of young ones, and we always kept young crows. You know, raised them, made pets out of them. They go off and have their family and everything. They come back and visit every once in a while, but
Well, they used to claim if you clipped their tongue some way they could talk, couldn't they?
no, I think that was all just an old wives' tale. Now they would try to talk. They would fuss back at you. Of course, the best thing in the world to fuss back at you is a duck. A duck will just, if you teach him to fuss at you, he will, every time you open your mouth, he'll open his.
Well, that's always good to have a fussing duck around, I guess. You know, we was talking about the old days. You remember back, you had your 37 Chevrolet Coupe. You remember back when cars looked like something, they changed the style and it changed really about every 3 years. It just kind of progressed through a 3-year transition to where it had a whole new body style. And they don't, right now, they're just too, well, a Mustang kind of looks like a car, and a Chevy Impala looks like a car, and I guess you could say that a Corvette, and there might be another one or two that cost you a fortune, but mostly they just look like beans now. You got big beans and little beans. I can't tell one from the other. I cannot tell what a car is if I can't read on it. They just all look like beans.
Well, you have to look at the emblem to know what they are.
Yeah, and about every truck or van you see is white. What, are they out of paint? Henry Ford said you could have any color you want as long as it's black.
As long as it
I
was
reckon
white.
now you can have any color you want as long as it's white.
Well, I can remember when the first maroon automobile come into our community. I remember that real well. It was a 39 Lincoln Coupe. It was a 12-cylinder coupe, and it was maroon. And that's the first car I ever saw that was wasn't black or maybe dark green.
Well, you know, I got to think about you the other day. A feller told me a story about a feller was walking up the road and kind of made me think of you. He said he walking up to there and there's a frog sitting there, and the frog hollered up at him and said, "Hey, pick me up, pick me up." And the old guy says, "Why do I want to pick you up?" And the frog said, "Pick me up, pick me up." So he did. And the frog said, "Hey, if you'll kiss me, I'll turn into a beautiful woman. And I'll clean your house, I'll cook you food, and I'll sleep with you. And I'll be beautiful." And the old man looked at the frog and stuck it in his pocket. And the frog said, "Hey, hey, ain't you gonna kiss me?" The old man said, "Nah, my age, I believe I'd rather have a talking frog." Are you old enough to trade a good-looking woman for a talking frog, Bob?
Well, I don't know. I told the doctor last time I went to the doctor for my examination, she said, you need to do something about your hearing, you know. And I said, well, you know, if I'd lost my hearing several years ago, I probably would not have got divorced.
There was an old guy out here named Chitwood, and
Did you ever know Joey Chitwood?
I don't reckon. An old man Chitwood lived out there, and we had a doctor up here. He's the guy that delivered me. He was just an awful good feller. Everybody makes mistakes. He could have just ruined my neck, I guess. But anyway, Doc Presley and old man Chitwood was there getting checked out, and Doc Presley said, "Have you got any problems?" And Chitwood said, "Well, yeah, Doc, I can't hear myself fart." Presley said, "Well, we'll just have to get you something to make you fart louder, I guess."
I, I reckon that's right, you know, talking about Chitwood.
Yeah.
I never knew any Chitwoods until I moved up here, but the circus and the fair always had Joey Chitwood and his automobiles where they did run on two wheels and they jumped with them and everything.
Did you ever see them guys on them motorcycles ride them?
Oh yeah. I knew some of the guys that used to ride the motorcycles.
What happened? They got up there and run out of gas. You ought to be able to wind them down,
I guess they could. You know.
Probably be a little quick.
Yeah, I bought some property off a man that used to perform in the circus down in Long Beach, North Carolina one time, and he was a character. He was the one. He had a machine that drove these pylons into the ground that you built your houses on, and when that I believe that was Hurricane Carol or something that come through in the late 40s.
I don't know.
And there wasn't but two houses standing on Oak Island. That was his that he built, and one other one that he built there. And,
How many is standing there now? None?
oh yeah, they really built back. I bought some land cheap down there, right after that hurricane come through. It just cleaned everything off that island.
Started fresh.
Yeah, and you could buy lots down there real cheap. I bought one lot down there. I gave $600 for it. And I was teaching school and I had to make payments on it in order to get it paid for. Well, I kept that lot 48 years.
Did you get $600 out of it and you sold it?
I had paid $5,000 in sewer assessments alone since I'd bought it, and I sold it for $470,000.
That's a pretty good markup. We need to have you investigated.
Well, I gave $400,000 to my children and kept $70,000.
Well, you wasn't due but $600.
Huh?
You wasn't due but $600.
I know I felt guilty about taking that other.
Yeah, I'd feel bad. Hey, like my hat.
I do. Yeah, what's the rest of it?
That's all I had. It said, you remember that one you used to have had the hair come with it? I wish we could find that. I bought this thing. I was wanting something, to keep my hair out of my eyes
Right. Right.
since my hair grew out. But I read it and it said Hokey TV. I was looking right there in the mirror. It said Hokey TV, and I said, well, that's just what I need. And then I got to looking at it, and I guess my dyslexia kicked out, and it don't say TV. It's Virginia Tech or something.
I've been more or less bald-headed for the past 75 years, I reckon.
I might be able to sell you my hair, and you get you a wig made.
Well, that's what I was going to tell you. I used to ride Harleys on the road, and I didn't ride too much because I run with a crowd that dirt raced, and we didn't think those guys that rode on the street were too good of riders, But I rode some on the street, and I had me a helmet,
Had a ponytail on it.
Gave me a blonde ponytail out the back, you know. And I pull up, park my Harley.
See it
Everybody
coming.
looked, I pulled my helmet off, and there was my ponytail
Yeah.
on the helmet.
Hello, Bob.
Well,
You need help.
I've had a good time in life. I tell everybody when I pass away, don't ever cry for me. I've had a wonderful run. I've had a wonderful family. I have good children, good grandchildren, and I've just really enjoyed.
Look
my
what they
life.
got stuck with.
Yeah, I could have lived life a lot better than I did, but I don't believe I could have had half as much fun.
Well, anybody who'd put a donkey in a hotel room, it's got to have something wrong with them.
Well, yeah, I wasn't exactly rebellious, but I was resentful to a lot of things, and you know, I bought that motel. It was mine. I got it paid for it in 3 years, what I owed on it, and it was mine. And the city had done me wrong. I had septic tanks. So I bought a lot next to it. Well, it wasn't a lot. It was about 4 or 5 acres right on I-85. I bought that lot so I could extend my sewer lines over there. Well, they come out there and we perked it and everything. They said you cannot put any more sewer lines across this land's no good. So a young man that I had coached against in high school sports owned the land behind me. And he says, Bob, I've got an outfall right down at the bottom of that hill. So if you want to pull your sewer lines down there and tie into it, you're welcome to do it, so it won't charge you a nickel. So we went out there and we hand dug down. I helped, but I didn't do a whole lot of it.
Sure.
My plumber, he hand dug down and tapped onto those septic tanks and poured a line, and it all passed inspection because he was a licensed plumber. And he poured a line down to that outfall line, and we put pillars up where it needed to, and it was all above ground from my place on down to the outfall. Well, I sold that lot next door. I was offered a real good profit on it, and I sold it. Well, the man next door had some kinfolks in the city up there. I looked over there, and there they were putting septic tank. He tried to hook on that outfall line, and the board that let me hook onto it wouldn't let him. So there he was, putting in legal septic tanks over there, and they wouldn't even let me extend my lines across them. So I had a letter from the city of High Point that said that that land would not perk and was not suitable to extend any lines across it. So I just took that and told my lawyer what was happening and took it to my lawyer, and he stuck it to them because they had given me a letter denying me the right to pull any lines across there, but yet they had issued a permit to put in 2 new septic tanks.
Well, you know, I read this thing about up in Minnesota, these guys that got their place took over, but they're peaceful demonstrators up there and burnt the buildings and tore things up and everything. The city there, you had to have a permit, and I think that's a crock, but you had to have a permit in order to tear down what was left so you could get down to bare ground to build back. I mean, this is just getting rid of the junk. Had to have a permit, and the city would not issue permits unless you paid your taxes for 2020. Well, these people didn't even have businesses. They was put out of business because they city or county or whoever had instructed the police not to interfere with these peaceful demonstrators out there burning buildings down.
Well, yeah, peaceful, yeah.
So they didn't have a business left. They couldn't earn any money. Only thing they was wanting to do was start over, but they couldn't get a permit to start unless they paid all their taxes for this year. But they couldn't make any money because the city had let them burn everything down. They finally, there was some lawsuits started, and I reckon the city relented and let them haul the junk off so they could start over. But that's about the. Oh, I hate people that want to mind your business for you.
Well, first of all, they don't know what they're doing. That's one of the worst things. But yet they want to convince you that they are the absolute word, they are the absolute authority, and there's no other way other than to do it their way. And
Did you see that thing up there? I think it's in New Jersey, and I may be wrong, but Trump had a political rally up there, and somebody, one of the CNN probably said, "How are you doing this? You got all these people here, and they're not got masks on, and they're too close and everything." And Trump said, "Well, there's according to your law, there's an exception for peaceful protests." He said, "This is not a political rally. This is a peaceful protest."
well, I think that's real odd that they would let these people just run roughshod over everybody, irregardless of permits or the coronavirus or anything. They're allowed to do what they want to do, and this is really a serious election coming up in November.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know exactly how Trump's going to do. He had all the cards stacked against him last time, so maybe he can get out and work hard enough that he can overcome all those cards that are stacked against him this time. They brought, what's her name, Kamala Harris in as a woman of color, She's not any more woman of color than I am a man of color,
Well, she's part Indian and part Jamaican. Her family owned slaves.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, she's
But they haven't mentioned
descendant
that
of a slave owner.
Right.
We need to make a statue of her and then tear it down.
Right. That's what they need to do.
You go beat up a statue of Thomas Jefferson, well, you got the real live person in front of you now. You ought to be able to take a hammer to her or something. I don't know. I mean, I don't mean that seriously, but just by that logic.
Well, that's true, you can't say Thomas Jefferson was racist.
Well, the whole world is
he fathered a whole lot of children by...
that's still up in the air. I've got my doubts about that, because he had this nephew, Eustace, that was kind of a party animal. He hung out around there in the slave quarters a lot.
You think he was helping out?
Well, I think there's a question there about where that DNA gets inserted. And they did, you don't read this, but they said that, what was her name, Sally something was...
Hemings.
Yes, Hemings was supposed to be his daughter, but they've completely ruled her out.
Right.
But there was one of the offspring that, he was supposed to have been the father of her children.
Right.
And the firstborn, they ruled it out, but there was one later on that had some Jefferson genes, but there's a pretty persuasive argument that they might have belonged, that kid may have belonged to old Eustace.
May have, of course, Jefferson.
Eustace or you something, it wasn't Eustace, it's you something.
Yeah, Jefferson did take her to Paris with him.
Yeah, I know, she's 14, but
Right.
she come back, she had a young, and everybody said he knocked her up while he was over there, but they've ruled that young'un out completely based on Offspring, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's a strange, strange world, you know. I was raised up down in the middle of North Carolina where there's a lot more racial diversity. There's a lot more black people down there in that area than is up here, you know. And they just never did make it across the mountain too good.
You know, I was surprised found out Daniel Boone had slaves.
Did he?
Yeah, he had slaves throughout his life.
Well, you know, Daniel Boone used to live down close to,
Boone, North Carolina.
well, no, Moxville, North
Yeah.
Carolina, you know.
I know where that's at.
Okay, well,
That's down there where I mentioned your name and they offered to throw me in jail.
I've been stopped 3 times going through that little old town.
I'm not surprised.
The second time, I knew the high sheriff real good. He lived right up
I
there.
think he knows you too.
No, he knew me from my work. I worked right up there close to his house, and I told him, I said, I didn't say much. You stopped me. I come through it last year, but I said, I'm just going up and have to call Bobby. His name was Bobby also. I said, I'm going to have to up and call Bobby. I said, I got his home number right here, and tell him you need to get you a damn job rather than just aggravating people when they come through here. And so I come through there again one time. He started to stalk me. I was driving a different vehicle, and he got up beside me, saw who it was, and I just waved to him. He went on. You know.
He said, well, go ahead and run over another flatbed. That's where I went in there. You told me to go over and look at your place on the river. Said I could go up in there and spend the night there in my camper. And I went in there and got lost and went in this little store. And I said, do you know anything about Bob Andrews? And this big old guy over there with a badge and a gun on his side come over and said, what about Bob Andrews? I said, he said, listen, boy, I'm 70 years old. He said, boy, don't be around here when it gets dark.
I bet.
I may have lied a little.
I know.
You tell it often enough, though, you can remember how to keep telling it.
I'm getting ready to go down that way for too long.
I'll call them and tell them.
You know, don't give them don't give them any advance.
That way they'll be ready.
I come out through there one night, and back when I had that white crew cab Beauty. I don't know if you remember it or not, but
Yeah.
I was going
That
out.
whiting
Yeah, I was going
looked
out.
like a ship going down the road.
Going out Lexington Avenue, and they were having a license check there, and I pulled up and I handed him my license, and he checked at me. He says, "Well, Mr. Andrews, what brings you to North Carolina?" I said, "Well, I just bought a load of pot down." Bought a load of pot down from the mountain. He said, "Huh?" And they started looking all over that truck. One of the sheriffs back in the back says, "Don't pay no attention to me." He says he owns the farm across from my daddy.
Do you remember that time we got hustled over at Y12?
Yeah. Yeah, up under the car.
Yeah, all we done was we went in there and we saw we was going the wrong way and they wouldn't let us turn around. They stopped us and took us in the fence and locked the gate behind us. And then brought the dogs out there and sniffed us and took our driver's license and checked it and everything and asked us all sorts of questions. And if you remember, Tommy was sitting there in the back seat and they never said a word to her.
She could have been carrying
She just
a
sat,
bomb.
yeah, she sat back there and read a book through the whole thing. And we didn't even want to be in there. All we wanted to do was be turned around and let loose. But they took us in there and gave us a thorough searching. I'm still convinced, of course, I would say we've got our names on a file somewhere in Washington.
I think we're on file up there, yeah.
But I'd say that was just some guys there trying to get a quota to justify, instead of having 20 people there, they wanted to keep 27, and
Right.
they had to stop somebody every now and then. And you know, it wasn't long after that there was some people went in there and had a set-in strike there in one of their buildings. And then about the same time, there was some woman got lost, they turned her in the gate by mistake, and she couldn't figure out how to get out, and she drove all the way through the area, and they stopped her on her way out. And all she wanted to do was be let loose too. It's like I was that time I went to Canada, and they didn't want to let me out.
Oh, I went into Canada. I didn't have any problem. I drove a motorhome into Canada back many years ago. And, had a real good time. It's pretty up there. You know, one of the prettiest states, I think, during the summertime, you know, it looks like a Walmart parking lot with snow on it. In the winter, it's Maine.
Yeah, I like Maine. I've been up there once and spent a week or so.
Yeah, it's beautiful up in there.
I had a cousin, two cousins, brothers. They went to Alaska and they drove up there. And one of my cousins, he had never got an ID, a driver's license with a picture. You know, when they first started that, if you're so old, you didn't have to get a picture driver's license. You just get them refilled like they was. They figured you'd die before you ever needed a picture. Fortunately, he ain't dead yet. That's been a while. But they went across the border up there in Washington and went up into Alaska and going to Alaska. And they got to the border and they wouldn't let them. This is before 9/11 too. They wouldn't let them in to Alaska without a photo ID. And they had to sit there for a couple of days so they could get a photo ID sent up so he could get out of Canada. All he wanted to do was go home. He couldn't get out.
Yeah, well, rules and regulations, you know, sometimes they don't make any sense at all, you know. And
I don't think they make any sense that people are enforcing them. They just got a job and they don't want to get out of it.
Right. Well, you take, you know, we don't do a whole lot local here, but I really feel that this coronavirus has given the government a chance not to do a lot of things that they ought to be doing.
Sounds like Thunder Road out there, don't it?
Yeah. I believe that's a vehicle.
Wouldn't be somebody started your truck, would it?
No, not mine. That's not mine.
Well, how long's this thing? I don't want to talk and run out of material.
Well, you know, cases of the virus are going down, seems like here in Tennessee.
Everybody done died, I guess.
Huh?
Everybody done died.
Right, you know, Trump's brother died, and he was, I believe, 1 year younger than Trump, and it's a serious thing if you catch it. I don't know.
He didn't have that.
Huh?
They didn't say he had it.
They didn't.
No, he had something else wrong with him.
All right. I wasn't aware of that. I just maybe assumed that that's what he had, but you know, at my age, I try to be very careful. I'm a tough old bugger, but I don't know whether I would survive it or not.
Well, I don't like the flu at all, let alone something new and foreign. I don't like it. I get a flu shot every year, but I don't reckon I got one for this yet.
Hey, I haven't got one this year. I've got one probably for maybe the past 10 or 12 years.
I'm going to get one for the flu, but I don't know whether I'll be first in line to get one for this year Kung flu or not.
Well, you know, I haven't had the flu since, knock on wood, 1962. So it's been a pretty good while since I had one, 58, 59 years, and I'm not looking forward to having it either.
It ain't no fun.
No.
I've had it a few times. The worst case I ever had was in 1976. I got it in April, and I mean, I was feeling fine, and it just in 30 minutes time, I just died. And I was sick for 2 weeks, and I didn't get well. I got it in April. I didn't get plumb well till the end of June.
Really? Well, when I caught the Asian flu that came through in the late 50s and 60s,
I had that.
in 62 I caught it. But the reason I caught it, I think, I had 15 acres tobacco. My wife was pregnant. I was working second shift and farming during the summer. I was out from teaching school. And I worked myself down so low and so weak that I just wasn't able to fight it off. And I caught the Asian flu, got real sick. It went into pneumonia, and which they can cure. And they cured the pneumonia on me, and I got okay, and I finally got that crop made.
You can get cured from bacterial pneumonia, but they ain't nothing for viral pneumonia.
Right, yeah. I guess I had maybe bacterial,
Yeah.
because he gave me a big shot of penicillin.
Yeah.
And so I got okay, and that's the last time I've been sick with the flu, and I ain't looking to get sick anymore.
Bob, do you know which animal has 4 knees?
What?
Do you know which animal has 4 knees?
4 knees.
Yeah.
All of them have 4 legs.
No. Dog ain't got 4 knees.
Huh?
A dog ain't got 4 knees. They got 2 in the front, but they don't have a knee in the back.
Right.
There's just one animal got 4 knees, unless you want to count gorillas and apes and stuff like that, and say their knees, their elbows is knees, but that'd give us 4 knees too.
Yeah. I don't know unless it would be the, what's that old tall animal?
A giraffe?
Yeah.
No, they got a long neck, but it's got 2 knees.
Okay. What is it?
An elephant.
Huh?
An elephant.
An elephant.
Yeah.
Well, they do all
Yeah.
4 of their legs.
That's why
have
they
legs.
use them for road graders and stuff.
I reckon.
I don't know what that's got to do with anything, but I just thought I'd see if you knowed.
I really hadn't thought about it. You know?
A lot of people don't think about it.
I'm gonna go on and think about it for a
And
while.
we get over here, I want to social distance a little.
Okay.
Well, anything else you want to cover or say? If not, we'll call it quits.
Well, I don't know of anything except I don't especially like the viral Democratic convention.
I ain't watched it.
I'll catch a little bit of it, you know.
They say it's a real a cliffhanger. We just
Oh yeah, it's just drawing all kind of people to watch it, you know. But you
more exciting
I
than
had-
Super Bowl.
I heard a little bit of Michelle Obama's speech. I heard a little bit of Barack Obama's speech.
A little bit would do me.
Uh,
A little bit of that would do me.
and just
It's like Brill cream.
just a little bit.
Little
did
dab.
me do, yeah,
Mhm.
just a little dab will do you. And but they are so intent, as they've been since 1916 or 2016, to defeating Trump, that I believe they're going to overplay their hand. I don't believe they're going to get quite the outpour that they take from women and from the people of color, you know. I think it's going to kind of boil down to the way it did in 2016.
Well, we'll see. I've got a few predictions, but I'm going to keep them undercover for a little
Okay,
bit longer.
Until the event happens, so you can say.
I tell you
are-
what, about November the 5th or 6th, if we don't have mail-in vote by voting, I'll tell you who the winner is. But if we have universal mail-in ballots, it'd probably be a year or two before we'll know for sure.
Well, you know, I have some misgivings about mail-in votes because there's too much leeway to manipulate things.
Well, all they want to say is there's no evidence of anything like. Well, just let me ask a question. Which would be more likely? And I'm not asking about what's happened or what will happen. I'm saying what would be the easiest way to manipulate the election, where you've got a vote in person photo ID, or vote by a ballot mailed to you and you mail back. Now, which is more likely to be the most accurate?
Right.
I mean, and if you can't agree that an in-person ID would be the
most
yeah, then you need to do away with all sorts of security clearances and stuff. But
right.
anyway, if you agree reasonably that that would be the most secure, then why would you not want the most secure way to vote?
Well,
if you can't put forth the effort to go vote, you're not interested enough or informed enough to make a vote that count, that should count.
I think that's very true, and of course they bring up the fact that you have absentee ballots, and but that's an animal of a different
Well, they know who got an absentee ballot, and they know whether they got it back.
Exactly right.
You can mail out ballots to dead people, and they'll still get voted.
Right.
You can mail them out to the wrong address, and they'll still get voted.
Right.
If you send them to the right people.
Right.
That's about the easiest way to cheat. Well,
right. Well,
if it's just one vote, it's still crooked.
You heard the story about LBJ when he was out getting people's names to go on the ballot for him.
No.
And they were in the cemetery getting names off the tombstone.
I thought that only happened in Chicago.
No, that's happened down to Texas. And said LBJ was in there with them, and there was a couple of graves way up in a real wooded and bushy part of the cemetery. And Scott says, I don't believe I'm going to go up there and get the names off those tombstones. LBJ says, look, they got just as much right to vote as these other people have. Said you go up there and get those names.
I heard Jimmy Carter on a late night talk show, and I believe it was Dick Cavett, but I may be wrong about that. But he said that down in Georgia, when he was governor, that they passed a law that if you'd been dead over 2 years, you couldn't vote. And he said, the guy said, well, what do you mean? He said, well, back then it was just a traditional thing that if Grandpa died close to the election, you know how he's going to vote. You just vote in his place, too. He ain't been dead long, and he said if he lived, he's going to vote for somebody. And they said they actually, now I'm telling you what he said. I don't know if it's true or not, but
we'll look it up.
but he said we passed a law that if you'd been dead over 2 years,
you
couldn't vote anymore. Now, he may have said 4 years, but I'm going to stay with 2.
That was discrimination.
Yeah, if you've been dead over 4 years, 2 years, you're not allowed to vote anymore.
Well, my mom and Dad was a Republican and Mama was a Democrat.
She was one of them Talmadges, wasn't she?
And her aunt, her mama's sister was the Talmadge.
Okay.
But Mama and Dad, they voted every year for 70 years and killed one another's vote.
Looks like they could have got together on somebody.
No, they couldn't. And now Daddy was a Democrat until 1928 when they nominated a Catholic,
Yeah.
Al Smith, to be president. He quit the Democratic Party then, and he was a WASP. You know what a WASP is, don't you?
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
White Anglo-Saxon Protestant, right? Okay. He quit the Democratic Party in 1928 and became a Republican.
At least he wasn't a yaller dog Democrat.
Yeah, I've known a few of those over the years.
What else? Anything else?
No, I think we might can reserve it for next time, you know, and hope everybody that ain't watching will watch next time.
Yeah, we want to invite all you people that ain't watching to tune in again next week and
Right.
tell all you
Yeah.
friends.
Right. So they won't watch either.
Yeah, we're gonna go live with this show some of these days, and we get all our difficulties figured out.
All righty.
Ta-ta for now, or bye, or something.
Right, we'll see you later.